Hi, my name is April, and I'm the peaceful wife. I am almost 40 years old, and this May 2013 will be my husband and my 19th wedding anniversary. I have a blog called www.peacefulwife.com. You're welcome to take a look. I talk about God's design for marriage. Well, today I want to talk about trust. You know, marriage is designed by God to show that relationship between Christ and the church, where the husband represents Christ and he plays the part of the love, the selflessness, the sacrifice of Christ, and the wife plays the part of the church, showing that adoration and faith and biblical submission where she cooperates with the leadership of the husband. I think about how God says without faith it is impossible to please God. This is in Hebrews 11, verse 6. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. And I think that husbands, God made them to respond kind of the way he does. Masculinity is about seeing the heart of God. That strength and at the same time that love, strength and gentleness together. I think that husbands have a very similar mindset where when we have faith in them, it opens the door to relationship and it helps them to become their very best selves. Husbands respond to our faith. I talk about the word submission a good bit. In our culture, it is very misunderstood and a much hated word, and it means all kinds of things today that it didn't mean in the Bible. But if you don't like that word, there's another word that I think you could kind of use to replace the word submission. But the concept in the Bible of submission is the concept of ranking under somebody in authority over you in the military. For instance, the captain of the ship and the first mate. They both have responsibility, they both have a lot of authority, they both have duties, and neither one is more important as a person, but the captain ultimately answers for what happens on the ship. And it's a similar concept where the husband is the God-given authority and the wife is the one who cooperates with the authority, but she has an important job and important roles and a lot of influence, and it's her job to share her feelings, her perspective, her desires with her husband so that he can make the best decisions. But then if they disagree and the husband is not asking the wife to sin, then what God asks us to do as wives is to cooperate with our husband's leadership, to honor their leadership. But another way to express that same concept really is to say that we trust. Now, first, my trust is really in Christ, and I'm ultimately submitting to him, giving my whole life to him. Every Christian is called to submit our whole lives, all of ourselves, to Christ every day, to die to ourselves and to live for Jesus. So we're submitting to Jesus first, and then because we love him, because we reverence him, because we honor him, we submit to our husbands. But I like the way that we could describe it just as trusting. We are trusting God to lead us through our husbands, and we are trusting our husbands. Now, if our husband is sinning against us, and if there's infidelity, physical abuse, drug addiction, alcohol abuse, that kind of thing, then please get some godly help as soon as possible. If that kind of thing is not going on, then trust is something that we can develop. We can work on developing with our husbands, and some of us have a hard time with that. Laura Doyle, the author of The Surrendered Wife, talks about developing your trust muscles and how her trust muscles were so weak when she first started to learn to give up control and to respect her husband. And I can completely identify with that. I wanted to be in charge because that way things were going to be done right. And when I first learned to trust God and to trust my husband, I was terrified. I felt like I was flinging myself off of a spiritual cliff or something, but I learned that my husband is a really responsible, wise, capable, intelligent, competent man, and I can totally trust him. And all that time, I had only been able to trust myself, and I couldn't trust God, and I couldn't trust my husband because I was putting myself in the place of God in my heart. So I've learned to trust my husband, and what freedom that gives me. What a load off of my shoulders to be able to trust him and not to feel like I have to carry all the weight myself. Gary Thomas is the author of Sacred Marriage and also Sacred Influence. That particular book, Sacred Influence, is for wives. It's a great book. Sacred Marriage is for husbands and wives, and it's a really insightful book for Christians. He talks about how a husband looks into his wife mirror to see who he really is. And he will become the person that he sees. If he looks into his wife mirror and she is full of contempt, and she doesn't trust him and doesn't have faith in him, and she doesn't believe in him, and she puts him down and bosses him around and criticizes him, tells him what to do, takes over, he will become more and more the man that she is reflecting to him. But when a wife reflects back trust, faith, admiration, pride in who her man is, that adoring look in her eyes for him, being proud of who he is as a man. When a husband looks into his wife mirror and sees that glowing joy, that beautiful godly femininity that is a gentle and peaceful spirit that does not give way to hysterical fear, he will usually respond by being motivated to become his very best self. Now, this is not to say that if a wife obeys God, the husband always will do what she wants him to do or always become a better man. Ultimately, we do this because God asks us to do it, and he will reward us for our obedience, regardless of what our husband does or does not do. But most husbands, when they see our faith, when they see our trust, want to become that man. This is how God creates heroes out of regular guys. He uses us to be his partner. There is so much power in our godly femininity to influence our men. There's so much more power in doing things God's way. The world says, oh, if you show respect to your husband, he's going to walk all over you. You're never going to get your way. You're going to be a slave. But that's not what usually happens at all. As a man feels admired, respected, trusted, and sees that his wife is actually depending on him to lead, most men will step up and become a better man. It's going to take time. It takes time for a wife to learn this stuff, and it takes time for a husband to learn to be a godly leader. Both of them will need a lot of grace and patience. But our power is not in our pointing our finger and blaming and criticizing and scolding and lecturing and nagging and preaching. Our power to influence our husbands is in our smiles. It's in our faith in what they do well. It's in our praise for what they do right. It's in our friendliness towards them, our cooperation with them, our admiration, our spirit of being willing and wanting to say yes to their ideas, our openness to their wisdom and their perspective and their dreams, our vulnerability. When we can tap into godly femininity like this, it gives our husbands the most amazing feeling in the world. It's a high for them. It makes them feel so powerful. That is the kind of godly femininity I would love to see every wife tap into. You can't do it on your own. You need God's help. And I have a lot of posts about this on my blog, and I have some other videos all about this stuff, about godly femininity, godly marriage. And I hope that you'll take a look and let me know what God does in your marriage.